So I'm Nichelle Grandison, the Managing Director of Strategy Plus Consulting. I'm the founder of our annual Caribbean Strategy Summit. And I want to say welcome to our second installment of the 2023 CSS Strategic Performance Management webinar series. Welcome again to the 600 plus registrants and participants today, whether local, regional, and international, that is joining us. Now, this series forms part of the lead up to the 2023 Strategy Summit. Last year was focused heavily on strategic planning. This year, though, it's a little lower in altitude, and its theme is surrounding strategic performance management. And we'll get some more details on the summit after our presentation today, so stay tuned. And now I'd like to hand you over to David Wilsey, the CEO of the Balanced Scorecard Institute, and today he'll be presenting on the topic of measuring intangibles, a step-by-step guide. So David, over to you.
Thank you, Nichelle. Yes, so today we're going to talk about measuring intangibles. Most organizations, they're pretty good at measuring tangible elements. What I mean by that is financial performance, customer satisfaction, the output from our production, right? Sales. Some things are very, very concrete, very, very simple and obvious to measure. Today, what we'll talk about are the intangible elements that frankly make up most of our strategies. I mean, especially when you're talking about balanced scorecard, that whole bottom perspective, learning and growth, organizational capacity. We're talking about elements that are more intangible, that are often key to our success. Okay, so that's we'll talk about it in a step-by-step fashion, how to make those things maybe a little more concrete. As Nichelle said, I'm David Wilsey. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Balanced Scorecard Institute Strategy Management Group. I'm coming to you from Cary, North Carolina. We're in the U.S. That's where our headquarters is. I've been doing strategic planning and performance measurement and KPI development and OKR development, those kinds of things for 18 years. And I hope that I've worked with an organization like you all probably over the years. Okay, so a little bit more about this whole idea of intangibles. What do I mean by an intangible? In the accounting world, they talk about tangible assets, right? Let's say I start a company and I go buy a laptop and I buy some office equipment. I spend $5,000 setting up my office. So we have $5,000 in tangible assets. And then I sit in front of my computer and I write a program, I create software, and it solves a problem in the world. It's wildly popular, and I sell my company for $10 million, let's just say. The company still has $5,000 in tangible assets, but the $10 million, that's pretty much intangible value. Okay, so this concept of these first two bullets, intellectual property, goodwill, brand value, that's pretty obvious in sort of an accounting sense, what I mean by intangible. But like I said earlier, in the balanced scorecard world, when we're trying to implement strategy, we're trying to effectively achieve outcomes that we previously hadn't been able to achieve. We're usually talking about implementing strategies that depend on improved use of technology, improved human capital, maybe an improved culture, performance culture. Maybe it's just the skills of our team, relationship building, innovation, creativity, all these other things that are listed on the screen. And almost all these are intangible. And so, like Nichelle said, there's 600 people online. We're all really interested in solving this problem. How do we measure? What is the step-by-step process for trying to come up with decent measures for these more intangible elements? So what I'm going to do today is go through the basic process, but I'm going to use innovation and creativity as a case, as an example. I've been focusing a lot on creativity and innovation lately with other presentations. And so there's if you see how the step-by-step process works in this environment, you should be able to apply this for any of the rest of the areas. Okay, so first about our process. On the measurement side, we've been helping organizations with measurement since the mid 90s, right? Helping with performance and following the same basic process. But in the last couple of years, we have rebranded this, and rethought some of the elements. At the same basic principles, we call this the IMPRA model, the IMPRA framework: measure, perform, review, adapt. In other words, we have the same process for designing the measures, driving this ongoing performance review cycle. If anybody is familiar with the OKR world, objectives and key results, there's a heavy emphasis now on this idea that we are going to review on a regular basis our performance and adapt. We're going to be more agile. We're going to adapt on the fly. And so this emphasis in the EMPRA model focuses on this performance review cycle and this idea that we're going to adapt on a regular basis. Today, though, we're going to talk about performance measurement development, and the process for development almost always starts back over here, where first we have to launch the program, we have to get the team on board, we have to make sure the leadership is on board, we have to communicate what this is about, agree on the procedures, and maybe talk about automation, get the right culture in place. And then, to me, the magic step for innovation, culture, any of the rest of these innovation happens right in here. We want to make sure we have consensus on the team as to what we're trying to accomplish. So when somebody in the room says, "Oh, we need more creative people," or "We need to increase innovation," the first question is always, "What does that really mean? Do you really?" Let's talk it through as a team and make sure that we understand in concrete terms, sensory specific terms, what that actually looks like. Let's make sure we all agree on the strategic intent in a big picture sense. What are the objectives we're trying to achieve? And then in concrete terms, what are those intended results that we're actually trying to achieve? And a lot of times, to be frank, when they're talking about innovation, in this conversation, it suddenly turns into a conversation about process improvement or something completely different. It's really about product development, or it's really about our culture. There are all kinds of things that they might mean. And so you really have to get people in a room and talk that through. And that really is the magic part of the process. And we'll talk a lot about that. Then we move into this step where we understand alternative measures. We have lots of frameworks that we use to generate potential measures. And in this webinar, I'll talk about how you use the research process to learn more about how others approach this process, this kind of problem. Generate potential measures, and then we have a very disciplined process for selecting the right measure or two for each objective, and then defining those, moving into the performance review process that I already described. All right, so let's dig into the creativity idea, the innovation idea, as a way of demonstrating what I mean for any of these intangibles. Okay, so again, establish consensus around strategic intent. That means talking through, what, in a big picture sense, what is your strategy? What is your mission, vision? Making sure that we are all on the same page as to what this means, because your strategy drives what your objectives are, and your objectives will determine what you're going to measure and what kind of actions you're going to take. People will call us sometimes and they'll say, "I'm wrestling with my performance measures. Can you help?" And almost always the problem is over here, not here. Okay. They say they want innovation, but they don't have any idea as to what innovation actually means. So, and it's not enough just to get that person on the phone to articulate it. You have to get people in a room and have a real conversation about what this actually means, and write that down as a strategy. Okay, and then I talked about how we're going to use various tools to come up with alternative candidate measures. So we have, when we once we've articulated our strategy, we describe our objectives, we describe the intended results of those objectives, and then we talk about how do we generate potential alternative measures. We have all kinds of tools that we use at this point. We like to do process flow. We like to do cause effect analysis. In our classes, we teach all of these models to help you generate lots of potential ideas. And then, as I said earlier, what I like to do at this point is also do some research. I think that a lot of times people in this seat, the consultant, will tell you, whatever you do, don't pick measures off a website. Don't pick them out of a book. follow a disciplined process. But I think that's a little unrealistic. Yes, you want to follow a disciplined process for sure. But wouldn't that conversation be deeper if we also did some research to figure out how others have approached creativity, the measurement of innovation? What does Disney do? Their innovation is important for them. Let's learn more about the science of measuring creativity before we select anything. So we have, this is a long conversation to generate a long list of potential measures, and then we have a disciplined process to select and define the KPIs that go with each intended result. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about making sure we understand what we mean by creativity. Can everybody go to the chat and say, let's pretend we're all on a strategy team, and we decided that one of our objectives was to increase creativity or increase innovation. Why would that be important? What would you be aiming for? Can everybody maybe open up the chat and just jot down some ideas as to why it might be important for any organization to be more creative?
And don't forget, do it in the Q&A window, okay, guys? May not be able to put it in the
Yeah,
chat.
maybe the chat does. Okay, good. Thank you,
Yeah, I
Nichelle.
think the chat is disabled.
All right.
So we
Okay,
have
good.
competitive differentiation from Tanya, from Charlene, continuous innovation and improvement, sustainability from Indira. Janet says increases employee engagement. Heather says avoids groupthink. Chevrolet reduce costs. Yeah. Service and product differentiation, market share.
Nice.
Yeah. So there's a few of them, but most of them around more creativity and all of that, innovation, better solution, shorter lead time, survival. I like that one,
Survival,
Chevrolet.
yes. All right, awesome. So the first reaction to this is, wow, this could mean lots of different things to lots of different people, right? In 30 seconds, we got, probably 40 different types of answers in wildly different directions. And so if this is important for your organization, it's super critical that you get a team in a room and talk it through and try to make sure you down select to the outcome, the actual outcome you're trying to achieve with something like increased innovation. Okay, so some of the school solutions, where it challenges the old ways of thinking. Maybe it's about identifying new opportunities or improvement ideas. Maybe it's about promoting innovation in general. Maybe it's just about diversity of thinking. I think there was a couple of groupthink comments on here, collaboration and so forth. So there's lots of possibilities. And so any of these intangibles, the first thing you have to do is get your team to agree on what is the consensus around what we mean by it and what are we trying to accomplish. Okay, so just using creativity as a case study, let's go do some research. What is it that academia thinks creativity means? Usually an idea is thought of as creative if it's novel or original. Okay, maybe are there some measurements that we might be able to design around originality? Is that what it means for us? Maybe that's not what it means. Useful, adaptive, functional, surprising, non-obvious. Maybe some of this is useful or not. Organizations that value creativity are typically aiming for new product development. That's sort of an obvious answer. We're trying to develop new products. Can I count the sales related to that? Or innovation management, maybe there's a whole funnel that we have related to managing our innovations, innovative problem solving and so forth. So let's get a team together, talk through do any of these sound like what we're talking about? Is it related to innovation? Because that's a whole field of management, and what does that mean? Peter Drucker says this is a change that creates a new dimension of performance. That's a pretty consultant speak kind of sounding definition. How about executing new ideas to create value? Anonymous says it's the commercialization of creativity. Aha, so that this is about making money. We want to sell products. Is that what it means for us? The government of New Zealand says the creation, development, implementation of new products or process or service with the aim of improving efficiency, effectiveness, or competitive advantage. and so forth. I'm not going to read through all these. The point is you want your team to talk through what this word means before you just grab a measurement off a web page or out of a book. Make sure you have consensus on your team. And then again, let's do some research. How does academia think about measuring creativity? Well, that traditionally you would measure creativity either objectively, you have a number of ideas, related sales, or subjectively. You have critical opinion. You know, when somebody makes a movie, what happens? The critics go out, or we all go on to whatever the app is called, and we rank the movies, and the score that the critics are giving the movie and that the public is giving gives you some indication of the quality of this creative endeavor, right? So maybe there's something there that we can use. Okay, creativity has been defined in an academic sense as divergent thinking. In other words, can somebody generate new ideas quickly? Or convergent thinking. Do they see connections between things that others have not seen? I've heard Bill Gates talk about that, and I've heard what's the Apple guy talk about convergent thinking, making connections between things that are not that traditionally you wouldn't necessarily see. So how do I test that? There are tests for this in academia. We can use the alternative uses test, we can do the sketch generation test, or we can use the remote associates test, each one designed to answer a different one of these questions. And I've done these exercises with groups. It's a very interesting way to get people thinking outside the box. The alternative uses test was designed by J.P. Guilford back in '67. It's designed to measure divergent thinking. Can you generate lots of ideas? So the way the exercise works is you give the whole group an object like a brick, and you say, everybody, you got 5 minutes, go. On Post-it notes, generate every alternative use you can think of for a brick. And so people are writing down a step, a paperweight, diving aid, and so forth. And then you evaluate. You can either do this systematically, or you can just in a workshop have them self-evaluate their own answers based on fluency, originality, flexibility, and elaboration. So if I came up with more ideas than everybody else, then my score is over here on fluency. If my ideas, if we do some clustering on the wall, affinity grouping on the wall, and I see that my ideas didn't get grouped with everybody else, it means that my ideas were more original than everybody else's. If I had, there's several, my ideas fell into different clusters. I can say I came up with I was more flexible in terms of the themes, as opposed to, if I came up with 10 different weapons, that's not very flexible. It's really all just a weapon. I just came up with specific versions of that answer. And then finally, how elaborately developed were my ideas? So I can score myself on these 4 criteria, give myself a total score, and then divide it. And I for each person you could have a score, and that's designed to test and score my divergent thinking. Then you've got remote associates test. The remote associates test is one where you're given 3 words, and you're supposed to look at those 3 words and determine what word connects them. Okay, and so you can do 30 or 40 questions like they did it originally. When I do this in a workshop, I usually do 10, something like that. And it gives everybody it's sort of a game to see if you see connections. And so I'll show you one. And again, let's use the Q&A. If I said sleeping, bean, trash, is there a word that kind of goes between, it connects those three words? Tanya was the quickest on the draw. Yes, this is a bag. I was pretty quick too. All right, so what if I had told you, now that everybody knows where the Q&A box is, widow bite monkey? What connects what there you go. Clive is on top of it. He was the quickest draw this time. So it's a spider. All right, so if you like that, if that's your idea of fun, you can go to this website, remoteassociatestest.com/c, and there's like hundreds of these, and so you can create your own and quiz your team. the point again is to determine whether you're good at convergent thinking. Can you see connections that others might not see? And then the other exercise you can do is this idea generation. You give everybody has a blank piece of paper, pen, and you give them a topic. So last week at the IASP conference, I said, let's do strategic planning in the post-COVID era. And so you've got 5 minutes or so to do a sketch, and then we stop the sketch, and then everybody evaluates their work. Maybe you have a neighbor do your work, and you have these criteria to determine on a scale of 1 to 10 how creative was your creation. The point here is just to demonstrate that there are, in fact, academic approaches to measuring creativity. So now when you come back to your team, you can say, how can we use this knowledge to generate potential measures? Objectively, we can count ideas, we can count related sales, we can subjectively have some sort of an evaluation score. We can think about this divergent thinking concept and say, maybe we have an ideation process, and we can evaluate our scores based on the creativity of the ideas. Maybe we can use the criteria for generating, approving, or determining how subjective our ideas were with the scoring based on the generation test. Maybe we can use the concept of this remote associates test to generate something about the number of ideas that match the an unorthodox consumer need of some sort. So in other words, I'm using this academic research to sort of inspire well-designed measurements of creativity. So again, I'm using creativity and innovation as a case, but the idea is that any kind of intangible, you can probably go out and do research and find out how others are approaching it. If you're talking about employee engagement, boy, there is a ton of research about employee engagement. Don't just ignore that. Go find out how people are approaching it and use that to inform your measurement conversation. Again, which one you select is going to depend on your strategy. And for some organizations, innovation is a strategy. And so we're going to have many measures in this environment. Imagine this is maybe a Disney or like a company that innovation, maybe I'm a product development company. I have multiple objectives. I want to improve the culture. I want to improve innovation management. I want to improve speed to market. I have all kinds of objectives related to this strategy. And for us, innovation is a process. It's a really big deal. I have an ideation department maybe, or a couple of people that are focusing on what's out there in the market. What does the market need? And they're evaluating technology that's coming out. And they're keeping an eye on it. And any kind of ideas that come out of either of these buckets go into an evaluation team, and the evaluation team determines whether there's a market need for it. Is it feasible? How do I prioritize these? Then there's an entrepreneurship step. In other words, do we need to build out a new venture maybe? And then we develop the products. Again, this is not an innovation management class, but what I'm focusing on here is that for Disney or for a company like that, innovation management is a really big deal, and they might have multiple measures focusing on that strategy. On the other hand, let's say innovation management is not that big a deal for us. It's really more of one piece of another strategy. This is maybe Amazon. Amazon.com has this awesome supply chain strategy. I mean, they can get a product to my door within a day of ordering it, just about anything I could possibly dream of, which means they have a great culture. They have supply chain infrastructure. They have process efficiencies. They're improving home delivery revenue, and a piece of that strategy, I've heard them talk about it and talk about it and talk about it, is an innovative culture. They want to innovate top down, sideways. They want to make sure that they embrace a Failure, no judgment failure. They want, no, you want to be able to try things. If it doesn't work, we try something else. This concept of being able to fail quickly is really important to them. So for them, they have measurements around this culture, but then their strategy, and I don't work for Amazon, but I'm guessing their strategy has more to do with these elements, and this is just one driving factor. And then finally, most of the clients I work with, when they talk about innovation, they're really talking about it as more of a value. We're talking about operational excellence. We've got all kinds of objectives and measures. What we want to do is make sure that we solve problems in an innovative manner. This is this kind of scenario. This is that we use this in our strategy classes sometimes. Not my job description. I draw lines. I don't remove trees. We want you to be more innovative than that. Everybody should be innovative. We don't, move the tree, figure out a way to solve problems in an innovative manner. And so in this case, the measurement elements might be much more subtle and not so much of a major element, aspect of our strategy. So back to the beginning, before you go down the road in measuring any of these intangibles, is to ask yourself, how does this fit in your strategy? How big of a part of your strategy is this particular intangible? Is it a major part, a smaller part, or just a more like a value? All right. So then once you pick a strategy, even before you get to the measurement, you have to make sure you have good objectives. Okay, and in our classes, we stress this, all of our classes. Before you do the measures, make sure that you're thinking in terms of continuous improvement. Good objectives are describe what is successful. They're simple and easy to understand. They can imply sort of an audacious goal that you're reaching for, but in some cases they might imply more of an incremental continuous improvement. Again, you want to talk that through and ask yourself, which of these are we actually aiming for? A good objective is not business as usual. It's not just our regular run of the mill. We need to hire people and that sort of thing. It's something that we're moving the organization forward on. In our classes, we coach people with these semantics, and I know some people, it strikes some people as really sort of goofy to focus on the semantics so much, but I have seen one person after another come into the class who are thinking in terms of very narrow actions, and when they leave the class, they're thinking in terms of outcomes because they've forced themselves to use the right kinds of verbs, something that implies continuous improvement, improve, increase, enhance, reduce, and so forth. Something that I can see trend. So some good examples: good customer satisfaction, computer skills, increase access to services. You'll notice the not so good examples are the more action focused type of objectives. I train all employees. I'm going to be done with that. Social media campaign is an initiative. What I want to know is the social media campaign making a difference? Is it increasing brand awareness or increasing sales or something, more of an outcome focus of that particular campaign? And then we've sort of been adding this, again, in the OKR world, you see a lot of people get really excited because somebody takes an objective and it sounds boring and they write it in a way that really fits with the culture and it's more inspiring or maybe poetic. So instead of saying we're going to improve customer satisfaction, we're going to create raving fans. Going back to that book, we're going to crush social. I don't know why people say stuff like that, but for some reason that resonates with some people in a way that doesn't resonate with that. Whereas improved social media campaign, it just doesn't have the same resonance. Become a creative powerhouse. So it just sounds better than, increased product development. So anyway, so if you can do the extra credit part and really get people inspired, that's great. Just don't trip over yourself trying to, sometimes people they confuse people if they get too carried away in that. All right, so then you've generated all your potential measures. We've created that long list. We did our research, and then we go through a process where we select the right measurement. And we're looking for something that has the strongest correlation or contribution to intended results. When we're generating ideas, we don't worry too much about that. We're always looking for the best fit. And the point is, you're going to generate a lot of ideas and then down select to a one or two. Make sure that you can influence things. Make sure it's capturing the right behavior changes, and it's not you don't want the wrong behaviors encouraged. Sometimes that happens with a poorly designed measure. Make sure that we're thinking about leading and lagging, the relationship between what we're doing and the outcomes we're trying to influence. Maybe start with what you have and add complexity and so forth. All right. And then we have a discipline scoring process where we say, well, whether the measurement is strong or not, and then is the data actually available or not? How feasible will this be to implement before we select the final measure? All right. Then finally, sometimes with an intangible like innovation or creativity or employee morale, or one of these things that that there's not that one single measurement that perfectly captures what we're trying to accomplish. Sometimes it's useful to create an index. An index is a grouping of measures under one name, and the reason why we do this is because, like I said, I'm talking about innovation. Maybe the revenue, it doesn't perfectly capture it. Maybe the number of ideas generating it doesn't. But if I capture 6 of these at the same time and I create a score out of them, it can sometimes be useful to track that the innovation score. It can be it's sort of give you an idea more broadly about whether you're accomplishing what you want to accomplish or not in a trendable sense. All right. If you want to know more about this stuff, we have our KPI program. Michelle's going to talk a little bit about her event coming up, but all of our training programs are designed to give you that step-by-step process to help you understand what you're trying to accomplish and create a performance dashboard like this to help you understand whether you're getting better or not. We have the same thing on the OKR side. If somebody's interested in this particular framework, all the same principles. But it's designed to help you with this particular model. All right. Any questions?
Yeah, that was a lot to wrap up in that short time there, David, but you did good. You did good.
Okay.
Okay, guys, any questions for David quickly? Please type in the Q&A. Now's the opportunity before I get into our summit presentation briefly. No worries.
No questions.
You did too good. For our first one with Howard.
Either that or nobody knows where the Q&A. I confused him with the chat box comment.
I'm sure all you leaders in the room would have performance questions. All of you who manage staff. Some more difficult than others. All right, seems like we have one. Can people's behavior be measured?
That is a great question. Yeah, certainly. In other words, Monica, I'm interested in what you're getting at. To me, the question is, do you want to make sure your measures are encouraging the right behavior? It seems like most measurements are designed to measure the results of somebody's behavior, ideally. It also sounds like, Monica, you might be getting at the idea, this concept is, should our measurements be focused on the individual level as opposed to more of the organization level? And I tend to err on the side of making sure that for the most part, our performance measures are focused on the organizational performance. And so you want your measures to encourage the right kind of behavior, but they should be focusing on the outcomes we're trying to achieve. This is not about bashing people over the head and punishing underperformers in an individual sense. It's about trying to get everybody to understand what we're trying to achieve and whether we're making progress.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's spot on, David. But of course, Monica, as you go lower, at the lower levels, probably at your tier 3, as David mentioned, which is at the individual level, of course, you can have metrics for behavior, right? I think this presentation was more surrounding your tier 1 at corporate level. All right, so Noreen, I have moved from traditional strategic or planning to the inclusion of a visioning process so people can ascertain their current status to make the index and eval of intangibles more relevant. I guess that's a statement. How can we translate intangibles to tangibles? Example, return on investment from Amal.
That's a great question as well. It is what we do is we tend to connect them. So we create a strategy map, and you have intangibles tend to be things at the bottom of the strategy map. We have culture, and we have knowledge and skills, things like that, and we try to draw a connection between those objectives that we're trying to achieve down internally and the more results that we're trying to achieve and the upper perspectives on the strategy map. So we can say our theory is if we get these right, it will drive these results. And we, maybe over time you might look for a correlation. It's very difficult to do a 1-for-1. If my knowledge and skills score goes up by 3%, that means that I'm going to make more money next year. It's usually not that concrete. Planning measurement is almost always more of a conversation about what we should be focusing on and less of a precise scientific, correlation kind of an exercise, if that makes sense.
Okay. Somebody has in travel and tourism, great importance is given to Iridex, which is an index, a measure of irritation caused by tourists on the local community. Okay, so I guess that's them sharing. Again, somebody's raising how do we measure or score behavioral objectives like emotional intelligence, but I think you touched on that. Right. One from Tanya again, in organizations where data maturity is very low, should you train on data first or do you do it in tandem with creating metrics? Example, how to create data visuals, interpret them, and act appropriately.
That's again a good question. It's if the data maturity is low, it usually implies to me that our approach to measurement is weak. We just don't value it. And so what I would try to do is create at least 1 or 2 case studies where you really make it work. Find something important, one of your key strategic themes, strategic goals, create a handful of measures, implement them well, implement some initiatives, prove with a line chart that the initiatives are actually driving performance, and then have an exercise where you get some people together and talk about the value of this process. You're trying to prove that the process is helpful. The process of collecting data, trending it in a more sophisticated manner, and then the process improvement, all those elements that if I can do all those in a coordinated fashion, it drives the right kind of outcome rather than just winging it. If your data management is weak, you're probably just sort of winging it right now, and so you're trying to get people out of that mind frame.
All right, another comment. It's a nice topic. Please add more such topics, especially related to strategy with examples. From Clive, he's asking, can you see this applied externally? Example, the impact of a charity on their users, follow on as part of metrics with a theory of change. Don't know if that's clear enough for you.
You said, I didn't quite catch you. So can you see the applied external?
The Q&A. Yeah.
Follow as part of the theory of change, right? So my understanding of theory of change is that you've mapped out sort of the cause and effect story, similar to a strategy map. And what you want to do is sort of like the previous question. It is very difficult sometimes to literally show a statistical correlation between these elements, but you can map them out on a dashboard and see them side by side and have a conversation about whether or not we believe the movement on this measurement over here is actually driving the external or impacting the result that we're ultimately trying to achieve. Again, it's about informing a dialogue more so than, proving beyond in a statistical sense whether there's really an impact or not. I know that sounds weak, but it's the truth is it's very, very difficult to some of the hardest clients we work with are the scientists who want to see this to be a precise scientific exercise where I prove that peanut butter causes cancer. I have to see the math. I have to get it peer reviewed. That's not the way management works. Management is a much more softer science.
One from Noreen, process and process improvement is also measurable, but what are the best components or categories for that measurement of intangibles? That's the last one.
Okay. It's hard to answer. In other words, you need to know more about what you're trying to accomplish. What is the strategy of the organization, and what is the process improvement focused on? So I would have to know more about whatever intangibles you're actually focusing on with that process improvement. I mean, process improvement exercises almost always start with, tell me more about what you're trying to accomplish. And what does that actually look like in an outcome? What do we want to, what performance do we want to trend over time? So if if the process is focused on something that's more intangible, it's the same conversation. Let's make sure we have concrete intended results that clearly describe what that intangible means and what success actually looks like, and then what processes are driving those outcomes. What would it look like if things actually got better?
Okay, good. How to measure intangible creative work. Example, engineering, design, reports, and recommendations by engineers. Assume implementation is a separate organization and therefore out of scope. Is that one too hard? That's from Vidya Kanai.
I'm reading through the question again. Yeah, I mean, I've worked with engineering teams, and some of them they're very scientifically minded as well. But so you have to determine what the engineering team is trying to accomplish, what kind of outcomes that they're trying to are they trying to get to, and so the measurements would be focused on those results. I know that's sort of a fuzzy answer, but if almost always you have to know more about the strategy of the organization you're trying to help to actually give a more meaningful answer.
Right. And somebody's typing here that I please remember their question, and it's what are some examples to measure and monitor culture such as core values?
Yeah, it's going to depend on the values. That culture. We have a new associate, Shane Sokol, who focuses on the measurement of culture, the measurement of the performance culture and improving your culture, and that they have very elaborate assessment processes that they go through where they interview people and they're able to create a score. And then they can implement improvement initiatives to improve their culture over time, and then do the assessment again to determine whether they're making progress or not. And I don't want to pretend to be an expert in culture, but if you want to reach out to Shane, reach out to me, I can direct you to Shane, and he can definitely help you with those kinds of issues, and that would apply to any of your core values. There are all Gallup has done some really good work in terms of helping people with engagement. And so it just depends on what value you're focusing on. But again, back to my question, my point about doing some research, there has been some fantastic work done on some of these softer concepts in the organizational design side about creating a team culture or improving employee engagement. There's lots of great research out there that can be food for thought for creating the right kind of performance measure.
We'll take one more, and that's from George. Would you consider reputation as a measurable intangible, and how would you measure it?
Absolutely. Reputation, again, sort of like the first example I gave.
Mhm.
If a company it has $5,000 in tangible assets and they somehow sell the company for $10 million, there's brand value, the reputation. That's a sort of a version of reputation. So that there's value there. That company has $10 million worth of value that doesn't show up on the books, right? So you look at the Fortune 500 these days, it's like most of the companies on there are way more valuable than the tangible assets. So in the last 30 or 40 years, that has really changed the way all of us think about the value of a company. And so I lost my train of thought, but so anyway, so yes, reputation. The question is, can you measure that without going through the work of actually selling the company? or if you're not a publicly traded, if you're a publicly traded company, you would know that. But are there brand awareness kinds of scores you can do? Is there again, do some research on branding and how do I better understand the reputation for my organization? How are we perceived in the market these days? There's so much on the survey side that helps organizations with that sort of question.
Yeah, we'll definitely need that background data, and it would be, as you say, from the customer surveys. You have to hear from the customer, right? How they see the organization. So that's that's a good starting point. And then you can determine, what you want as an organization, how high you want it to be, and so on, and what work you have to do in terms of initiatives to fix that. So yeah. All right. So I think that's it. I think we're out of time. We're at 1:22. Thank you so very much, David. You were answering those questions like a sport. You look like you were out of breath. You said it so quickly. All right, guys, I'm just going to share screen quickly and we're going to run through the summit. David, we hope to hear you again at said summit. Looking forward. I know you have some hot topics that we'll see coming up there. And I'm just going to, just allow me there. Yeah, stop share there for me, David, and then I'll share again.
Sorry, didn't realize it was still up.
I promise this is going to be quick. All right, can you see my screen? David?
We can now.
Okay, you can now. Okay, great. All right, so again, this is why we're doing the webinar series, is really to market and showcase what's we have in store. Our theme, guys, is creating an agile Caribbean workforce through strategic performance management architecture. And while the summit is based in Trinidad, and we're reaching out or encouraging members of the region to attend, it's open internationally. Feel free. It's hybrid in terms of our vision or key goals, and I'm not going to go through all of that. In terms of the summit, is to improve regional and global impact of the Caribbean business, and more importantly for me, to increase the competence in strategic planning, execution, and performance management of our Caribbean leaders. Yeah, and that's something that's very near and dear to myself and the team. So our tagline, the future of strategy in the Caribbean and beyond, and we mentioned our theme. So it's made up, the summit, of 2 parts, 2 days, which is on June 22nd and 23rd. First day is the performance symposium, and then the second day is the KPIE, or the key performance indicators essentials course. So what David went into, we go a little bit more in depth, right? But you do have an opportunity to attend the last installment of our webinar. And that's on June 14th. That will be given by the Senior Vice President, that's Joe DeCarlo, and he'll do an overview of that same course. So if you're still toying with it and you're still trying to make up your mind, then that's the webinar to attend for sure. So it'll carry from David's today. Okay, so in the end, we want participants and attendees to learn practical techniques and tools to use in your 2023-2024 planning cycles and beyond, as well as any performance review periods that you have going on. Of course, the attendees and course participants will leave with a customizable strategic performance management model. David touched on it, which is the MPRA framework, which is a disciplined, practical, tested approach. Yeah, even though they said they did some rebranding, you can use that to develop and implement your strategic, game-changing, but sustainable KPI system. Yeah. In terms of our speakers and panelists, we have a range of consultants, authors, trainers, executives, and regional practitioners across the region. And then we have our our BSI and yes, KPI experts hailing from the Balanced Scorecard Institute, a part of the strategy management group, and those are our major partners. Collaborators we have here locally, Chamber of Commerce, TTMA, and Lockjack. Again, just a breakout for the two events and the costing. And of course, you can feel free to visit our website, www.strategyplusconsulting.org, and you should be able to get all of the information that you need cost-wise and so forth. Right, so these are speakers that I mentioned about earlier, international speakers, Howard, David, Joe, and Terry. And at our red strap table, our regional panelists, this is our lineup thus far for our confirmed speakers. We have about 12 of them confirmed so far, I believe. Yeah, Charles, Mariano, Julika, we have them from different industries, of course, telecommunications, retail, education, business, banking, of course, government sector, as well as private sector. So we try to get a smorgasbord that kind of represents each area. And also importantly, that they hail from different countries as well, and not just Trinidad. So we have Trinidad, Jamaica, Barbados, and I believe St. Kitts and St. Lucia. Yeah. Right, so in terms of the setup for our panels, 3 panels that's going to run, that's on day 1. So in between our lectures from the BSI experts, we're going to have 3 panels as well that would run in between that. And you'll have like 9 to 12 regional industry panelists. And as I said, these are some of the industries, 3 to 4 panelists, probably an hour max. You'll have an opportunity, of course, to ask questions throughout, because we want it to be an interactive one. And of course, they'll present their case studies in terms of, what insights they have, what have they learned as they, manage their strategic performance throughout the varying industries that they have led. Good challenges as well. We want to hear from them and what methodology that they've been using, most importantly, throughout. Again, if you don't grasp all of it here, feel free to visit the website, but this is in a snapshot, our topics for our symposium, which is on day 1. These are the, this is the agenda. So our first keynote feature is on remote work revolution, strategic performance management in a virtual world. The second one is overcoming strategy, execution obstacles, tools, techniques, interventions for high performance. And the third is leadership location drop, how dashboards transform strategic performance management in leadership. All right, so those are 3 hot topics. I know all of you, whether in HR or not, in strategy and strategic planning or not, would have had to, as leaders and managers in the workplace, have to deal with these type of issues, and we want to address it head on at the symposium. And then, of course, our panels, this is the breakdown. So the first is on strategy methodology, performance measurement for the hybrid workforce. Panel 2 on strategic objective setting and crafting the right measures and targets and initiatives. And the last table on strategic performance management and culture. Yeah. Again, all of these hot topics, but we'll be hearing from our regional speakers in terms of how they have dealt with some of these, with their responses, challenges, winnings, and so forth. A little bit on the KPIE program. We covered that earlier. Of course, on the website, you'll get what the learning objectives are, the benefits, who should attend, of course, HR executives, managers, partners, professionals, etc. Anybody who deals with talent and performance management, but of course, it's not an HR thing. We want our senior managers, CEOs, and other functional directors to know that performance falls on your lap as well. And together, we can really, make it strategic and get some success out of some effective performance management. Yeah, so we're happy to have you all. Okay, and in closing, I just usually use this quote from Peter Drucker. The only real difference between one organization and another is the performance of its people. And I really, truly believe it. Yes, you can have the best product, best service, best solution, but if you're not trying, to leverage your people, then it's not happening. Okay, you have to do it through people, and it's only through proper performance management. Okay, so I'll leave you guys with that. Feel free to reach out to us 310-3031. Strategy Plus Consulting at outlook.com website. If not, you can get us through BSI's website as well and their contact info. We are always here. But thank you again for visiting, and we hope to see you at the summit, whether for our local, regional, or international participants.